Hi, this is Sibila Extreme Vocal Channel and how to sing and scream like Phil Anselmo. Probably one of the most fucking hostile and goddamn electric vocalists in the world of metal. First of all, while watching this video, remember to be yourself, by yourself, stay away from me, remember those words from Phil, and don't try to imitate anyone, to copy anyone's style. I will not try to do it either. I will only demonstrate you and show you of which elements consist the style of vocals of Phil Anselmo. I must tell that he is one of my biggest vocal inspirations, especially when I have just begun my vocal adventure with singing with the distortion, with using the fry technique for singing or for screaming. Okay, so let's get down to it. Mr. Anselmo created pretty much various and unique awesome style of vocals. He is able to sing clean using his chest voice, using his head voice. His vocal range is pretty much impressive. He is also able to sing with the distortion. He is also able to perform high-pitched fry scream, pretty much fucking high fry scream or mid-high fry scream. He is able to combine the fry technique with clean vocals, like connecting clean shouting sound and putting on the top of that sound a fry scream distortion, a yell scream a technique. Phil also is engaged in a black metal project Score, where he just performs pretty much black and death metal fry scream, low growls, low scream and high pitched screams as well. So as you can hear, to sing and scream like Mr. Phil Anselmo, we have to learn pretty much plenty of things. And now we will get down to it and we will dive into this topic deeper. I will show you and describe you the best I can each of elements of vocals of Mr. Phil Anselmo. The very first thing from which I will begin can be surprising for you. It is expressing your emotions. If you want to sing like Phil Anselmo, then you have to feel. And it is all about honest expression of your feelings, of your emotions. And Mr. Anselmo does it in a perfectly balanced way, because he is not forcing his emotions and feelings on the listener. He just does what he feels, what is important in a specific moment for him, and he's just expressing it in a totally, sometimes brutally honest and natural way. And we can hear, we can feel that honesty, and it is pretty much helpful for the listener to dive deeper, to immerse deeper in the music, in the meaning of lyrics, meaning of vocals. So if you want to sing like Mr. Anselmo, then it is pretty much helpful to learn how to express our true emotions and feelings through our vocals. When we listen to songs like Hello, we can have impression like missing someone or some true lost friend or something like that. But when we switch the song like to the Great Southern Trendkill or fucking Hostile, we can have impression like Phil Anselmo is going to jump out from our speakers to fucking kick our ass. So whether you feel sadness, anger, you feel gratitude, you feel like you are in peace with yourself and the rest of the world, you are in love, you hate something, you feel joy, you feel anything, just at least try to honestly express it through your voice, through your vocals and your lyrics. The psychological aspect of singing is pretty much interesting and important, but now we are moving forward more towards the pure vocal stuff. So if you want to sing like Mr. Anselmo, then you have to develop pretty much wide range of your vocals. Because Mr. Anselmo is able to sing and to speak bass sounds, he's also able to sing pretty much damn fucking high notes using his head voice. Tenor sounds, pretty much high stuff. So developing of our vocal range is pretty much essential to master the style similar to the style of Phil Anselmo. So we have to be able to sing and to speak pretty much low, like floods, floods, like life itself. Yeah, 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 yeah. And be able to sing with our head voice, or it will be easier to begin with our falsetto. And this is pretty much helpful to stretch our range and to not jump for the notes. It is pretty much essential to do it step by step to not fuck up our voice, to avoid any constrictions, to just stay relaxed, to sustain our throat and larynx opened and relaxed. So stretch your range slowly, yet in a systematic, consistent manner, day by day, week after week, month after month. If you will do it right, then your vocal range will develop, it will grow like a fucking beast. But we have to be patient and consistent instead of jumping in a pretty much aggressive manner for specific notes. So avoid shit like or in opposite way while hitting lower notes. This shit is not healthy. Develop your vocal range systematically, day by day, week after week, month after month, and you will hear that it is just working like miracles. What is also very, very important is to use your breath support. Breath support is just taking away the most of the effort from our throat, from our larynx, and putting it lower in the area of our solar plexus, our diaphragm, upper belly muscles, muscles between our ribs and the lower back. And these muscles together creates the breath support. And the higher we go with our vocals, the louder we want to get them, the more distortion we want to put into our sound, the more support we use. For example, going from lower sounds to higher sounds, more support. Louder sound, more support. And more distortion, hey, 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 hey. The more support I use, the higher I go, the louder I go, and the more distortion I put into my vocals. Also remember that the breath support is a flexible tool, which means that we have to balance it. We only use such amount of support which is necessary to perform, to get a specific note, specific sound, not more and not little. When we use too little of the breath support, then our throat and larynx will compensate the lack of effort from our abdominal area and will probably get constricted, which can fuck up our voice. And on the other hand, we don't want to use too much of the support because then we will sound like this and my throat is already squeezed and compressed too much because I put too much pressure from my abdominal area. So observe what amount of support is necessary for you to hit, to get specific note, specific sound, and try to balance this shit. Also, my opera singing teacher has shared with me some valuable, helpful tip. If you put much effort into singing some specific notes and making specific sounds, then ask yourself if that effort is still comfortable, although it is pretty much intensive. If it is intensive, you feel much effort, but it is still comfortable for you to perform, then it is fine. Okay, so let's check out some clean singing from Phil. Every song will be in the description below the video. as if he were dead. When I'm hiding, when I need it, let me breathe. For a handle on this life I don't believe this time. So would you look at me now? Can you tell that I'm man? With the scars on my breast to prove I'll try again. Although Phil sings clean and smooth, we can hear a slight, very little amount of distortion. It is a compression. The difference is like between the two sounds I will sing for you, like ah, ah, and now the same sound with the compression ah, 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 ah. So you can hear a little slight amount of the distortion on the top of my clean voice. Hey, hey, only clean sound. Hey, hey, hey. And now the sound with the compression. And Phil Anselmo often sings even clean, but with a slight compression. And that compression can be easily heard when it is over-exaggerated, like in the intro of the song Losing All, or in the middle of a swan song. And now let's take a listen to know what I am talking about.
This is one called Losing All. Should've changed my way by now.
This is one called Losing All. Should have changed my way by now. Ha! So as you can clearly hear, it is not just a spoken, clean voice. It is more cocky, it is more like muscular, it is more like hard. And it is just that compression which Phil uses also for clean singing. But in those two specific examples, it is like over-exaggerated, so we can find it, we can catch it easier. We can call it tough guy effect, tough motherfucker. Head voice and falsetto are also very interesting when it comes to Phil Anselmo vocals. I think their roots is connected with that glam metal era of Pantera, but nevertheless these vocals are pretty good and damn fucking high, like the ending of Cemetery Gates. For sure, it is pretty much hard stuff to hit. Okay, so summing up to this certain point of this video, we already know that Phil Anselmo is master of expressing with total honesty his emotions through his voice. We know that he is able to sing clean using his chest voice, using his head voice. He also often uses compression on the top of a clean singing voice. He is also able to sing with the distortion based mostly on the fry scream. And to sing like Mr. Phil Anselmo, we have to stretch, we have to develop our vocal range and learn how to sing not only with our chest voice, but also how to use our head voice and how to transit in between our head voice and chest voice and head voice in a pretty much smooth manner. We also have to know how to use the fry scream technique. And the first key to the gate of fry scream technique is the vocal fry, lazy, purring or creaky sound like The next step is the compression, and we can achieve a slight compression when we will combine a vocal fry and our clean singing voice. So we can start with taking that vocal fry and stretching it on the top of our clean singing voice. We can more focus on the fry sound or on the clean sound, like more on the fry oriented. And more oriented on our clean sound. The last one is the sound, clean sound with the compression. It is not like it's more like Can you hear the difference? It is the compression. To not bore you to death, let's check out how Phil Anselmo performs the song from Morbid Angel with the Morbid Angel by themselves. Day of Suffering and Phil Anselmo. We can also hear a growl from Phil Anselmo in the Symmetry Gates song. Gates! When we are talking already about more extreme examples of Phil's vocals, then we can take a listen to his project Score, where he performs pretty much black metal or even black and death metal vocals. Low screams, high-pitched fry scream, mid-high-pitched fry screams. The sound is pretty much compressed, sharp and aggressive. Phil is also able to sustain notes for a pretty long time. And these are the signs that it is a fry scream. Of course, beside Pantera, beside Down, beside the newer band Score, we can find bands like Superjoint Ritual, which include Phil's vocals and compositions as well. It is packed with aggression, with heavy distortion, yell scream, fry scream, and pretty much harsh, heavy, aggressive shit. It reminds me of what Phil was doing on albums with Pantera like Far Beyond Driven and Vulgar Display of Power, just focusing on the heaviest and the most aggressive parts of that specific Pantera albums. There's also a band called Phil Anselmo and the Illegals, and we can find pretty much everything from Phil Anselmo's vocals out there and even more, because we can hear there not only very heavy distortion, yell scream, high-pitched fry scream, low screams, we can also hear them, find them some strange sounds like low grunting, which reminds me a little bit of grindcore. There are three things left to talk about, to dive deeper into, and first of all it is yell scream, second it is high-pitched fry scream, and the last one thing that we will dive deeper into by now is singing with the distortion. And when we listen to how Phil Anselmo sings with the distortion, we can observe pretty much interesting thing, because he's like beginning the sound from a bite. It is like he starts from a raised pitch and then he lowers it to the natural point, to the natural tone. It's like he begins sounds often, pretty much often like ow, ow. We can hear such bites, such beginning of the word from a higher register. For example, in the song Symmetry Gates, there is a line, well, I guess you took my youth, I gave it all away, and that word all is performed on head voice that is almost coming into the falsetto. Listen carefully to the part of the song and you will easily notice what I mean. Well, I guess you took my youth and gave it all away. So the pitch is raised, the register is higher, it is not chest voice, it is already a head voice combined with a fry scream, and it reminds me of biting the sound. Well, I guess you took my youth, I gave it all away. All alone as the memories so unfold. Here we have some more examples of what I mean by biting the sound and beginning specific words from higher registers from a raised pitch and going back to the chest voice or just regular tone of the voice.
Here we are in a world of corruption. Human nature is surviving free. Clash with reality. It raises up
Here we are on the world of corruption. Human nature is survival and breed. Clash with reality. It raises ugly head. Phil also sings in the opposite way when he is just stretching the sound towards higher registers. For example, he sings with the distortion on his chest voice and he pulls up the sound with the distortion towards higher registers to perform something in between fry scream and singing with the distortion on his head voice. Also listen to the part of the song Revolution is my name. It is like singing with the distortion and transitioning that distortion on the higher registers, pulling it up towards the fry scream. Never will I lie and say I'm still alive. One of my favorite moments of Phil Anselmo using the distortion, singing with the distortion, is the part of the song Hello. Just check it out.
Lord, how we miss him. At least what's remembered. It's so important to make best friends alive.
Very emotional, so it is a perfect combination of emotions and the distortion. As I have mentioned before, if you want to sing with the distortion like Phil Anselmo, then you have to be familiar with the fry scream technique, and the main foundation of the fry scream technique is the vocal fry, a lazy, purring or creaky sound. And to learn how to sing with the distortion further, then you have to learn how to use compression, which can be achieved, for example, by stretching your vocal fry on the clean sound like this. And in the beginning it can sound like this. It is pretty much relaxed, lazy and open sound.
Never will I lie and say I'm still alive. God, what makes you me? There's something on my side.
And now we will talk about fry scream, high-pitched fry scream by Mr. Phil Anselmo. Listen to some examples of his awesome screams. I have to honestly admit that the style of vocals of Phil Anselmo, besides it is awesome, is not too healthy. Mostly because his throat is pretty much constricted, full of tension. Many sounds, many screams are just squeezed out from the throat. Like too much strength is put into creating, into producing of sounds. Also, Phil was drinking, smoking and doing other things that are not helping our voice to sustain a solid, a good condition. So just remember that and be aware of that fact. As I have mentioned previously, the most simple way of how to get a fry scream is to transit the vocal fry from our chest voice register to the head voice or to the falsetto. We have to sustain the open throat, relaxed larynx, and to just move the sound from our chest to our head or to the falsetto register without any additional force or constriction. Just a slight amount of the breath support, opened space, and moving that sound a little bit backwards toward our soft palate, towards the back of our throat, and from the soft palate we want to move the sound towards the top of our head. Very interesting thing about how Phil Anselmo performs his fry screams is that no matter how distorted his screams are, we can actually still hear his real voice some deep beneath that distortion. So he's quite unique, and it is very simple, it is very easy to recognize that Phil Anselmo is screaming. What is not healthy for sure when it comes to how Phil Anselmo screams or sings with the distortion is that he often uses too much force, too much strength, and squeezes out screams and distortion through his throat. It is not healthy. There is too much tension, too much pressure on the larynx, and it can fasten our fatigue and fuck up our voices as a final result. So try to sustain your throat opened. We open our throat by lowering a little bit our larynx, like when we are yawning. Watch my larynx again. It lowers down a little bit, and our soft palate raises a little bit, so we create more space and use such amount of breath support that is necessary to produce any kind of sound with a comfort in your throat. You can feel much effort in the area of your belly muscles, of your diaphragm, but when this effort is still comfortable to perform, then it is totally fine. What is not fine is to constrict our throat and to squeeze it and to squeeze out any kind of sounds that we are producing. In the beginning, fry scream can be kind of quiet, and it is typical, and many people ask me why this shit is so quiet, and I ask how long do you practice? For example, 1 month, 2 months. It is normal that this sound yet is not so big that it will tear off the roof of your house or something. It needs time and experience to grow. Fry scream is kind of like muscle. Overall phonation, producing sounds, is coordination of our breathing and our muscles, and there is a process of creating a sound on the top of that. So our voice needs some time and experience to grow like muscles. For example, you are able to lift on your chest like I don't know, 80 kilos, and you are first time at the gym, but after like 3-4 months you will be able to easily lift up 100 kilos, and it works the same with our fry scream. So don't push yourself too much, let it be as loud as it wants to be, and step by step increase the volume without losing any amount of your comfort. And it will grow when you will allow it to grow in its own like tempo and time. Don't worry, it will grow, especially when you are sticking with the proper technique. If you want to learn more about the fry scream technique, feel free to check out the playlist Fry Scream on this channel, or to contact me and we will practice vocals together. The scream from the Temptation Swing song by Down is not typical because it is more like Phil began with high-pitched falsetto, then high sound, and on the top of that sound appears a distortion, and he pushes even more the sound using his belly muscles, his diaphragm, his breath support, and a little bit unfortunately squeezes his throat and squeezes out the overall scream. So it is more like combination of very high-pitched falsetto, and on the top of that appears a fry scream, a distortion. We have talked so far about self-expression, about clean vocals, about using our head voice, falsetto and chest voice, smooth transition between each of the registers, about singing with the distortion, about the compression, using them for singing, for screaming. We have come through the fry scream technique, and now at last we can take a final step to learn how to sing and scream like Phil Anselmo. And this one specific element is the yell scream. Phil Anselmo often uses and used the yell scream technique, for example, in his band Superjoint Ritual or in late Pantera albums. Heavy, harsh, very aggressive type of vocals, somewhere in between very harsh distortion and screaming. It is like shouting, yelling with the distortion, but deep beneath we can actually hear the true voice, clean voice, and the original sound color of the singer, of the vocalist. So it is again pretty much easy to recognize that Phil Anselmo is screaming, is yelling, because there is not only a distortion out there in his vocals, we can actually hear his true voice. And this is shortly a yell scream technique. And here we have some examples of yell scream by Mr. Phil Anselmo.
1, 2, 3, 4. Almost every day, I see the same face. A broken picture too. It fits the attitude.
Yell scream is probably one of the most challenging extreme vocals technique out there. It requires the most of the experience, the most of feeling, the balance, and the most of the awareness. Of course, it requires those elements when we want to perform it right and healthy for our voice. It is very easy to overdo things. For example, when we overuse the breath support, we will just squeeze our belly muscles like you wanted to take a massive shit. That tension will also appear in our throat, in our larynx, and we will just sound like this. Oh, I'm gonna shit myself. But when we will not make that necessary step, which is engaging of our breath support enough to compensate the effort so our throat could stay open, our larynx could stay relaxed, then the same thing will happen, because our throat and larynx will compensate the lack of breath support, which should appear lower in our abdominal area. So when we are overusing our muscles, we create too much pressure, too much tension, which also appears in our throat. But when we lack of the enough amount of the breath support, our throat squeezes by itself to compensate the lack of effort, the lack of the breath support. So we are on a thin line, and we have to keep the balance to not fuck up our voices, to sound pretty much pissed off, like we wanted to kick somebody's ass or anything else that we want to express. At the same time, we are sounding like we had sandpaper inside of our throat. It is just kick-ass sound, but at the same time it is totally comfortable for us to perform. And in my opinion, it requires the most of the balance, the most of the experience to do it properly, to sound great, to feel comfortable while making that awesome sounds. So beware of the yell scream technique, and first of all, learn how to use the basic vocal fry, compression, fry scream, and learn how to shout without constriction in your throat. The case here is pretty much simple. We only have to remember that the projection of the sound begins from our support. It initiates the creation of the sound, the producing of the sound in our larynx. And first of all, we want to just make a little yell with our clean voice, a little shout like ha, 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 ha. I don't know if you played Skyrim, but there is a guy, Dragonborn, and he screams like Fusroda and stuff like that. Fusroda is not the easiest word to project, so we will remain with that ha sound. But anyway, that guy just wiped out, blew out anyone that he shouted at, and we want to imagine the same. It is like you want to wipe out someone with your voice. Ha! 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 By moving my hand, I just show you the way that the sound is projected. It is not only level my throat, my neck, my mouth. It is the sound begins much more deeper. Ha! 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 My mouth is wide open. My throat is like a pipe. And the sound, the air that becomes later the sound, just moves through that open space, opened pipe, and is projected through my mouth. Hey! 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 We can also add a slight compression on the top of that sound, as I do. The clean sound would be like hey, 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 ha, ha, ha. And the sound with compression is hey, hey, hey. And our aim is to add the distortion. It can be vocal fry, it can be fry scream. We want to add up this sound, this distortion on the top of our clean voice, whether just clean or clean compressed voice. Yell scream is shortly a combination of our shouty, clean or compressed voice with the distortion, for example, fry scream. So we need to learn the good coordination and smooth transition between our fry scream and our clean or compressed voice. Let's assume that you are already familiar with shouting with open throat, with lowered larynx. It is totally comfortable for you to make. You are using a reasonable amount of the breath support. Ha! Ha! Easy shit. You are also familiar with using vocal fry, using the compression, and just a fry scream, regular basic fry scream like and our aim here is to combine those elements together to get yell scream. I'm broken! It killed my life! I'm broken! Fucking awesome! To learn the control, to learn the smooth transition, we can even create some exercises like beginning with a clean sound or a little bit compressed sound to then we transit into fry scream and we are trying to get back on the clean sound like it can sound like a donkey or shit like that. Or we can start with a clean sound and try to put on the top of that sound a fry scream to mix those sounds together. Fucking awesome! we can do the opposite. Begin with fry scream and to add on the top of that fry scream a clean sound. Beware of that exercise, because if you are not familiar with the fry scream technique, if you are not familiar with yell scream technique, then this shit can be pretty much devastating for your vocal folds and overall your voice. So let's make sure that you are good with the fry scream and then eventually try to combine each of the sounds. So if you are not familiar with the fry scream technique, begin with just a lazy vocal fry. Low, slow, pretty much lazy sound, purring like a cat, creaking like a door, depending on the pitch. The most simple way of how to get the fry scream is to transist the sound from our chest voice to our head voice or to falsetto without losing the relax and the position of our larynx. So it is just adding of the pressure from our diaphragm, our breath support. Okay, so here we have it. How to sing and scream like Mr. Phil Anselmo, one of the most fucking hostile and goddamn electric vocalists in the world of metal. I hope that this video is helpful and interesting for you, provides valuable information. If so, give thumb up, leave a subscription and a comment below the video. If you felt or knew that I have missed some important point in that video, feel free to let us know in the comment section below the video too. We will likely learn more. I am also interested in early vocal inspirations of Phil Anselmo. I know that he liked pretty much Black Sabbath, both with Ozzy and Dio. Pantera even did a few covers of Black Sabbath as far as I concerned. But if you know something more and you know it, just know it, feel free to let us know in the comments below the video. So again, I hope that you enjoyed that video. Have a great day, have a great practice. Be yourself by yourself. Stay extremely safe, vocalize. Cheers and love, fuckers.
There's nothing, no education, no family life to